Hello, hello, it is Monday. You know what that means. Welcome to another episode of Run Talk from our studio in Southern California. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Karp. Today's show is going to be shorter than usual, primarily because I have a small emergency to take care of. If you look closely, you might be able to tell what the emergency is, but that's all I'm going to say about that. So today we're going to talk about the issue of training and confusion versus habituation. Most runners train with a wide variety of workouts, even on any given week. They may do a long run on the weekend and an interval workout on Tuesday and a tempo run on Thursday. And so the question becomes, well, what is the best way to train? Is it better to confuse your muscles, confuse your body, force it to always be adapting to something? Or is it better to apply the same stimulus over and over and over again until you habituate to that stimulus, and then and only then change the stimulus to something else? And so today's show is all going to be about, a very short description about what is the best way to train. Should you train with a wide variety of workouts and train in parallel, where you do a lot of workouts at the same time, in the same week or the same month of training? Or is it better to train sequentially, where you focus on one thing, you master that, then you focus on something else, and then you master that, and you habituate to the stimulus? And so a lot of this talk gets back to the premise of training and what is rooted in. It's rooted in Hans Selye's general adaptation syndrome, where if you apply a certain stress, regardless of what the stress is, all organisms respond the same way to a stress. And that's how the whole idea of training and how to organize the training started, was with how organisms respond to a given stress. And if you give too much of a stress, or you give too many different stresses at the same time, it's very difficult for the body to accommodate to that and adapt to that. And so confusion is really just that. That you confuse your body by throwing a lot of different stimuli at it, and your body never gets used to what it's doing. And then habituation is quite the opposite, that you apply the same stressor over and over and over again so that you become a master of it. And I'm more in favor of habituation. I believe, through my experience, through theory, that habituation is the better way to train. And you could think of training as like any other skill. When you were a kid and you were learning how to play an instrument, let's say the piano. When you were learning how to play the piano, a lot of kids take piano lessons. I took piano lessons when I was a kid, but I don't know how to play the piano now. But a lot of kids take piano lessons. When you were learning how to play the piano, did your instructor give you multiple different kinds of pieces to play all at the same time? Or did you learn one piece and you master that, and then you move on to a slightly more difficult piece of music, and then you practice that, you rehearse that, you become a master of that, and then you practice a slightly harder, more complex piece of music? That's habituation. You apply the same stress over and over again. You keep doing the same types of workouts or the same types of training over and over and over and over again until you master the workload, until you master the kind of workout. Whether it's a VO2 max workout, or it's a threshold workout, or it simply may just be a certain amount of mileage per week. You master that before you introduce a slightly greater stress and then habituate to that stress. It really doesn't make much sense to change the stimulus when you haven't yet mastered the stimulus that you've been using. And so, like I always say to people, if you're looking to ramp up your mileage, you need to run whatever it is. So let's say 30 miles a week. You need to run 30 miles a week for enough weeks in a row that if you habituate to that and it becomes a normal experience for your body, when your level of homeostasis is now at a different level, say when you start training, your level of homeostasis is here. And then through the process of training, you raise that level. And so maybe this represents 30 miles a week, this represents 20. What you have adapted to 20, and then you get up to 30. Now you have to keep repeating 30 miles a week for as long as it takes until that becomes your new normal. We're hearing a lot about the new normal now, which really doesn't even make sense as a term. But anyway, let's just use it. 30 miles a week needs to become your body's new normal, your normal homeostatic level, before you increase it from there to 35 or 40 miles a week. And that's really the more elegant way to train. You apply the stress enough times over enough number of weeks for your body to absorb the training, make all of the physiological adaptations that are a consequence of that training, in reaction to that training, and then and only then you increase the stress to something more. And so you can apply the same strategy to the different kinds of workouts you do. When you're in a phase of threshold training, or in a phase of VO2 max training, don't try to mix things. Don't try to do a VO2 max workout on Tuesday and a threshold run on Thursday and then a long run on Sunday, because that's just too many stimuli for your body to adequately adapt to all at the same time. You will perform better as a runner if you focus on one physiological factor, one thing that you're trying to master, one type of stress, and then you allow your body to accommodate to that stress and habituate. And habituate really just means getting used to the point where you have saturated the adaptations that you're going to make, where no more training of that same stress will elicit any more adaptation. And that's the time that you change the stress to something greater or something different. It could be the same stress, but you may do more of it. You may do more workouts per week or more total volume. So it's really just about adding to that stress, or it could be changing the phase so that you're doing something completely different. Now you're doing some other kind of a stress. Maybe you change from threshold training to VO2 max training, or VO2 max training to anaerobic capacity training. So that switch, that change could be either a change in volume, more of the same thing, or it could be a switch to something different. But only make that switch once you have habituated to the stress that you've already been giving yourself. But the counter to that is you can't apply the stress for too long, and that's where habituation can become a problem and can become a limiting factor. Because if you apply the same stress for too long, for 6 months or something like that, then you have already saturated the adaptations you're going to make, and you're not going to get any further adaptations, and that's what leads to staleness, that's what leads to plateaus. And so you do have to vary the training. Variation is an important component of training, but you have to vary the training in a systematic way, not all the time, not week to week, maybe month to month. And so you need at least a few weeks of the same stress to fully realize all of the adaptations that are associated with that stress. And so habituation is a much more elegant way to train. It's a much more effective way to train than confusion. I know there's a pretty well-known guy in the fitness industry with his P90X workouts, Tony Horton. He talks about muscle confusion. Well, there's a lot of these exercise DVD stars that don't necessarily have a scientific background, and so you got to be careful when you listen to what they say, because confusion is actually not the best way to train. Whether you're a runner or you're a weightlifter, habituation is really the best way to train. But then make sure that you change the stimulus on a regular interval basis, whether it's every 4, 5, 6 weeks. And so that gets into program design and periodization and mesocycle training. Mesocycle is about 3 to 6 weeks long. There's a reason for that. And so you can change the stimulus every 3 to 6 weeks. But I wouldn't just throw a lot of different kinds of workouts at you in any given week in the name of confusion, because that strategy isn't as effective. You'll see improvements quickly that way, because if you are throwing all these stimuli at you and your body's got to adapt to many stimuli at once, you'll see a lot of initial improvement that way. But in terms of long-term progress, to be a better distance runner, habituation is the best way to go. So apply that to your training. Whether it's mileage or a certain kind of a workout, become a master of the workload, become a master of the workouts that you're doing. You be in control of the workouts rather than the workouts controlling you. When you first start doing a workout, the workout might control you because you're not used to it. But then over time, repeating that workout, you become a master of the workout. So if I say to you as your coach, I want you to do 800-meter reps in 3 minutes each, and we're going to do as many as it takes to fatigue, you can run them all in 3, 259, 301, 3, 259, 259, 3, 301. You're running them all within 1 to 2 seconds of each other, because now you have mastered the workout. You're in charge of the workout rather than the workout taking control of you. And that's the best way to train, is with habituation. So this is a short show because I do have to take care of a little slight emergency. But I hope that you enjoyed this. And my final thought for the show, my final thought of the day, is in relation to that, is in habituate. Regardless of what it is in your life, whether it's running or it's your job or it's a hobby that you're taking up, whatever it is, whatever skill you want to learn, maybe it's a foreign language, whatever it is, habituate to the stimulus, habituate to the stress before you change the stress. And that's going to lead to much more success in whatever it is that you do, rather than try to do 10 things at once. Everyone's heard of the cliche that you can either be a jack of all trades or a master of none, a master of one. I like to say master of one. It's better to master one thing than it is to be a jack of all trades. And that gets into the idea of habituation versus confusion. It's much better to do something until you have mastered it, until you become the expert at it, and you've mastered the skill or mastered the workload, and then and only then you change the type of skill or the gradation of that skill. Maybe do something a little bit more complex in that same skill, but you take on something more complex, or you become a master of the entire workload, and that's how we think of it in terms of trained runners, is you become a master of the total workload, the volume, the intensity, the volume of intensity. So that's a very short run talk for today. I hope you got something out of it. Join us next week from our studios in Southern California. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Karp. Thank you very much. See you next time.